Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. You know we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful February the 5th, 2019. And Big C is out traveling tonight. Charlton is running his show solo on a beautiful Tuesday, and it's Black History Month. And I just want to say to all of the people all over the sports universe that we love so much, everything that we do in life is about taking the chance. You got to take the chance to make things happen. It's about planting seeds. It's about reaping the harvest later. I know we have tonight's State of the Union, and no matter what side you're on, it really is about our country. Do we build a wall and keep people out as we are a country of immigrants, or do we tear down walls and embrace people as they come in to help build the United States of America? I just love so much about this great country and what we do. And I want to say today's segment sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. I know so many things that are happening in our world tonight. I have this great epiphany today. I spent a lot of time over in the Bay Area. San Francisco is gorgeous. There's a lot of money flowing into San Francisco, and it comes from different countries. It comes, a lot of it, from China. And there are a lot of people who are gentrifying San Francisco. But what it really is inclusion. It's embracing people who come here. As long as they have money and a business plan, then they can come here and buy property and buy real estate in the United States, but especially here in California, where there really is a lot of development going on all over the state of California. We know we were ravaged by the fires. We know that a lot of people lost a lot of things. But one thing you do not lose is hope. And what I love about the hope is that as people come here, they're still trying to experience the gold rush. We know the gold rush really happened in a town called Coloma, which is basically Rancho Cordova, Sacramento, east of Sacramento. And it was founded by, there's a lot of African Americans involved in that gold rush. We just had the Super Bowl 53 that was down in the beautiful city of Atlanta, Georgia. Also, predominantly African American city. And it put on a great Super Bowl. The game wasn't that great, but the show, the theatrics around it were great. That's the great thing about what happened in Atlanta, that people got the opportunity to feel like they were a part of something. And because they were given that opportunity, they really made it shine in Atlanta. I just want to touch on what the State of the Union means to all people in this great country of ours. As a young African American growing up, I was told that I could do anything I want to do. I could be anything I want to be. But we finally have, as far as people who are going to put their hat in the ring to become the next president of the United States, it's the most diverse we've had in the history of this great country. That says a lot. What does it say? It says that we all, like Dr. King talked about, and as Frederick Douglass helped craft the Emancipation Proclamation, that we are a nation of people that are all different, have our own religions, have our own beliefs, our own faiths, our own ethnic groups. We know all life came from the African continent. I encourage everyone to Google Dr. Leakey and Google Dr. Mendel. They talked about where all life began on the African continent. So we're all from the same tribe. I haven't seen the State of the Union speech tonight. I know it's happening as we speak. But I would like to just say, no matter what it is, we have a country of democracy where we all can put our vote to work for us. If you believe in something, vote for it. And I know we just came off of this Super Bowl event where over 100 million people watched the Super Bowl. And we don't even get 100 million people to vote. But a lot of people have their own thoughts about who should be president, what the president should do. Is the president bigoted? Is he a sexist? Is he someone who we don't want to trust our own kids around? You know, his comments of what he does to women. Now you have Pelosi, Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, standing above him tonight as he gives his State of the Union speech. We have the Me Too movement. We have Black Lives Matter. We have All Lives Matter. Everybody's trying to be somebody. Everybody wants to be significant. But I hope the way sports has united this country and has brought people together through education. You don't have to have a college degree to have a good education. You can be educated in the workforce. You can be a high school educated. Some people even dropped out of high school, but they went on to do great things in life. And I hope that with the State of the Union that I haven't seen, but you kind of imagine what it's going to be. It's going to be Democrats standing up for the Democrats, Republicans standing up for Republicans, and there are even going to be some independent speeches. I believe Bernie Sanders is going to have a speech. But no matter what it is, I think the Super Bowl showed us something. And it showed us that we are all the same. We just compete for different things. We compete for the same trophy, but we're all the same. And I just hope that at the end of the day, what we could all learn from this great Super Bowl that we just saw, the game wasn't that great, but the competition was great, especially if you're a defensive person. I just hope that going forward, that our country can realize that all of us are God's children. We're all created equal with the same opportunities. It's just how we treat each other that determines who gets the opportunities or not. And I just hope that we can all just take what happened in sports in the Super Bowl that wasn't the best, but you saw people coming together as a team. I hope that we can come together as a country. I know Big C's doing some traveling, and he's still, down in that Super Bowl partying mode, but I just appreciate what Big C brings to the show every time we do something. I want to throw back into how I got started in the broadcast booth back in, really it was in college when I was in college, but my first time really being in a press box in a professional stadium with the great John Madden and the late Pat Summerall over in San Francisco at the old Candlestick Park. And it was the San Diego Chargers and San Francisco 49ers football game, a preseason game on a Thursday. Having the chance to work that opened my eyes to so many things. I was working as specialty statistician, sometimes in the producer's truck with the great Mike Roig and Fran Morrison, and oftentimes in the press box with John Madden and Pat Summerall, and just learning from them how they call the game. I was also able to work with a lot of other great broadcasters in the business, and I know even Al Michaels, when he was with ABC Sports and doing the Monday Night Football, had come out and was able to be a part of that crew also. And just thinking back to all of the things, there's Michelle Tafoya. I remember meeting her when I was younger. Also Pam Oliver, when she was with Fox. Michelle Tafoya was with ABC, I believe, at the time. Met many people, the great Gus Johnson. I remember going over I was sent by a CBS crew to go pick up Gus Johnson. I believe it was Steve Taggart from a hotel in San Francisco, and drive him back across the Bay Bridge to the Coliseum in Oakland for a Raiders game. And I can't recall who they were playing, but I know they were doing the CBS games back in that day. Or it could have been NBC. I'm not really sure, but I know it was one of those networks. At the same time, I thought about, boy, it would be great to do this for a living. And, several years later, being able to do the broadcast business with other networks, went on to win a Bay Area Broadcast Excellence Award and worked with various radio stations around the country. Sports Talk USA back in it was 2000. It was Tom Brady was the first tagline on our shows, Welcome to Sports Talk USA with Tom Brady. And I remember it was in Atlanta when it was John Elway's last game. The Falcons had beaten, they had beaten the Vikings to get to the Super Bowl, and then they had lost to the Denver Broncos. I think it was 34-17 or something over that range. But it was Elway's last game down in Miami, and it was one of the best times that I'd had at a Super Bowl because the parties were so elaborate and it was so fun just being in the city of Miami for a whole week. Had a great time doing that. And that leads me to what I noticed over the Super Bowl preview. And I really want to just commend what was going on in the broadcast booth. I think Tony Romo did a great job showing what happens behind the scenes. When he had interviewed several athletes and several broadcasters, he was actually doing some work with the great Steve Nance, who also lives out here in Northern California, down near, I'll just say Northern California, and beautiful part of the country. They do a lot of golfing down in that region of the country. But what Tony Romo showed, it took me back to when I got in the business. Because I remember they had shown a scene, and I actually took a picture of it with my phone. It was at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, Missouri. And I'm speaking to young people that want to get into the business. I know we're talking about State of the Union. We're talking about sports. We're talking about how to be what you really want to be. About planting seeds. I remember when I was in that same spot that Tony Romo It's in right now. And they were at not Candlestick Park, they were at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, and they were standing up doing the broadcast, he and Jim Nantz. He was to the right of Jim Nantz, looking down on the field. And what a lot of people don't know, if you've never been in a broadcast booth, but you want to get into television, is you're not sitting down. The best play-by-play guys and the color analysts, unlike in basketball, they actually stand up for the game. Big C knows exactly what I'm talking about. He's done broadcasts for many years on a national level. You get a perspective when you are standing up as if you're on the field. And some of the things that Tony Romo talked about took me back to the time when I got started in the business and got trained in the business how to do it. And I remember in that picture that I took a picture of, they had the spotter to the left of Jim Nantz, and he's actually pointing out who's making the play on the field. And the reason I say that is because oftentimes they will thank the spotter in closing. I remember at a time there was Tom Hammond at the U.S. Olympic trials in Northern California. Right around the year 2000, they had the trials over in Sacramento. And I remember in the press box, there was Carl Lewis, who was banging on something inside the press box. One of the walls, they had the press box up there at the stadium during the live event. And I believe Johnson with the golden shoes was in the race. And as he was making so much noise, I remember Tom Hammond kind of gesturing, calm down, calm down. And that was Carl Lewis, who was trying to be noticed as opposed to respecting the broadcast. And I'll never forget that. I thought it was a very selfish act. It would be like a broadcaster running down into the field or to the race on the racetrack when you're trying to cross the finish line just to get noticed. And when Carl Lewis did that, he was admonished politely by Tom Hammond, like, hey, we're doing a show. And I'll never forget that, because people at home don't see those things. They don't see those things behind the stage. Just like watching Tony Romo and Jim Nantz when they had that same type of image at Arrowhead Stadium. And they did a thing where Tony Romo went all over the country, and he spoke to people like John Elway. I think they even spoke to the great Len Dawson. That was a great interview, just hearing that. And, of course, we've lost the late Pat Summerall, who I thought was one of the better voices in the history of television. Former athlete, great broadcaster, just people who went about their business doing work. And I was very excited to see that part. I was also able to be just around so many broadcasters. Lewis Johnson, who's done much great work for NBA on TNT, also NBC, the Olympics, travel around the world covering athletes. I remember talking to Lewis Johnson in 1996 at a Stanford Cardinal football game down on the farm in the old stadium. They were playing Arizona State. I believe Jake Plummer was the quarterback for the Sun Devils. I don't recall the quarterback for the Stanford Cardinal at the time. I remember doing some games as a spotter for Rod Gilmore, the great Rod Gilmore, who also does NFL broadcast. And there was a number of people that I was able to learn some things from. Dan Bill-Walmsley, I think, is one of the best color analysts in the history of sports, does a lot of Bay Area work. Bob Fitzgerald, who does some play-by-play calls for the Golden State Warriors. I remember doing, spotted a couple of games for him, but he was doing some San Jose State work at the time, and then I believe he was doing some work at the KNBR in San Francisco. But meeting so many people back in the day that opened those doors, and then being able to travel to Super Bowls. What did I see that has anything to do with the State of the Union? Broadcast is very competitive. Everybody wants to get into it if you love sports. Imagine being paid to talk about sports. That's a kid's dream, especially a lot of young boys. That's their dream. I go back to the great Irv Cross when he worked with CBS Sports. There was Jane Kennedy. And as a person of color, seeing an African-American woman and African-American man in the broadcast. And they opened for CBS football. And that was back in the day. But I remember as a young boy, I loved that image, and it got me hooked. Also seeing the great Bryant Gumbel, growing up watching him do broadcast work. So as an African-American man, how to become to Big C Sports, where we're not trying to be like everybody else. We just speak our hearts. I think what people don't see on TV, and in fact, I know what you don't see is what Tony Romo showed. And I know it was on the Super Bowl preview show. If you're a broadcaster or you're aspiring to become a broadcaster and you want to get into the business, watch it, Google it, pull it up, because it showed him having conversation. And Big C's talked to me about many things that I'm talking about right now. there's a whole crew of people that make the game possible. It's not just the broadcasters. Unlike Big C Sports, when I was with the networks, there's about, I would say, at least a good 100 people that help put together a show. They're all behind the scenes. You only hear about the announcer, the broadcaster, and the play-by-play guy, the color analyst, and the play-by-play guy. Every now and then you hear about the statistician or the spotter. So just so you know, when someone's back to pass and they throw a 20-yard pass and they complete it to number 88, whether that's Michael Irvin or Jerry Rice or whomever, it could have been Lynn Swann from back in the day. That's the spotter telling the play-by-play guy who caught the ball. Now, the play-by-play guy may know anyway, but that spotter is a second pair of eyes. The statistician is the one that says good for 20-yard gains. They have a flip chart that they point to numbers. Now, the good play-by-play guys, they don't need that, but it helps. It's just like having a co-pilot if you're a pilot for a plane. And to see Tony Romo do that so well, it taught me some insight about him. I never met him, but I think he's pretty fabulous in what he does. Some people don't like the fact that he may try to forecast the game. Maybe you could say, well, let the play-by-play guy call the game and then you do the color analyst work. The job of a color analyst is not to step on the toes of the play-by-play guy and tell people what you're going to see. The play-by-play guy, he's supposed to tell you what you're seeing, and then the color analyst, he explains to you what you just saw and why you saw it. I think Romo steps on Jim Nantz's toes oftentimes. He may not tell him in public, but he may tell him in private, or maybe they have that agreement. I don't know. Everybody has their own style. But I know when I saw John Madden do it, which I thought was the best in the business, I don't think he ever stepped on the toes of the late Pat Summerall. Pat did his thing, and John came on analyzing it, and he was the one that came up with drawing circles on the Chiron, but they use a Chiron chart to let you see what they're doing. It was Madden that started doing that. Now, other people have done it, but Madden did it best. But I don't recall him stepping on the toes of the greatest in the business, I think. I never saw him step on the toes of Pat Summerall. Now, everybody has their own opinion. So if you say you love what Nantz is doing and what Romo's doing, and I kind of like it at times, but I enjoyed more what Madden did with Pat Summerall. They both had their own time, and every broadcaster in the world, in fact, every broadcaster in the universe, you know your own style. I remember when I got back into the business and was doing some analyst work for college football in the Bay Area. I remember the play-by-play guy, they won't say, hey, quiet down, I'm talking, but they'll just kind of put their hand up like, hey, pause, let me get my point across, and then they'll give you the go-ahead sign to go. You never see that on TV. And you never hear guys say, hold on, let me make a point. But what you will hear people say is, I beg your pardon, or let me just interject real quick to get their point across. I think Big C and I do that a lot. I'll just ask him his thoughts, and then Big C gives me his thoughts. Now, again, I've been around Al Michaels in the business. I've been around Phil Simms, Lynn Swann, when in fact Lynn Swann was doing some field reporting work when I first got in the business. And then he went up into the booth for ABC Monday Night Football. I've seen the great Howard Cosell, never worked with him or on the same crew, but I've been around those businesses. I think Gus Johnson is one of the best in the business. Why he's not doing NFL football, I don't know. But I think he's so dynamic. And maybe some people say, well, he's too dynamic. He is hard for the color analysts to keep up with him. But I really think he's one of the best in the business. There's a lot of people. Hubie Brown's amazing. There's just so many people that do this. And you say, well, what does this have to do with the State of the Union? When you're an analyst and you are the play-by-play guy, you're not competing with each other. You're on the same team, but you may see things differently. What can the public learn about that? I think it's competition that every guy wants that job. We've seen a lot of guys come and go in this business. They all want to be a part of something great. And if you ever get the chance to be part of a TV broadcast or radio broadcast, you're going to have an analyst that you may step on their toes or you may not. But I think some of the guys who did it the best, they would tell you, and there's a lot of great ones. Charles Davis, I think he's excellent. His work is excellent. There's a lot of great guys in the business. They will tell you that as great as Tony Romo is, you don't do that. You don't go to you don't go to someone's home and start taking over where the host is supposed to take over. It's not a criticism, it's just an observation. You're not going to hear it anyplace else. Because a lot of times when you get into the business, you will get admonished, and they'll say, let the play-by-play guy finish his thoughts. It's not that important for you to let people know that you know more than the play-by-play guy knows. Oftentimes when those things happen, you won't see them working together for a long time. It's kind of like going on a date with someone, and someone that you're on the date with, they're spending more time trying to talk to your wife than you are. I mean, sometimes that's okay. It depends on what state you're in, I guess. That's an inside joke, Big C. I think you understand that. But if you're on a date with someone, you don't spend more time stepping over your. If you're on a co-date, you don't step on someone's toes. You let them do their part, and then you do your part. But it works for Tony Romo. I think, in all honesty, if they were to tell you the truth, Jim Nantz doesn't like that because he's never had that before. And I think in the next couple of years, you won't see them working together. I think Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, they have their own style of broadcasting. I don't know the men personally, but I remember working at the game in the Coliseum when the Dallas Cowboys came and they played the Oakland Raiders in the Coliseum, and Troy Aikman was a quarterback, and my job was to chart, how many hits he had against them, how many hurries, how many knockdowns, how many interceptions, and then how many, pass attempts and completions, how many yards, etc. And I remember also when the Giants came in, my job was to chart Michael Strahan, and he was one of the most dominant defensive players in the NFL at that time. But I still learned that those play-by-play guys and the color analyst would always let the play-by-play guy go first. And then he would say what he just saw. He never tried to say, let me impress the TV audience with what I know, even before the play is snapped. Now, I just got to ask you, everybody is different, just like the State of the Union that I haven't seen. But I have had many conversations with people about the style of, oratory from POTUS. And there are times when people say he's not honest. I'd say just Google check it. Google it, fact check it, whatever they do, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they all have a way of checking the credibility of somebody. Well, if you're POTUS, and again, you might be thinking, what does this have to do with the State of the Union? I'm going to tell you, it's about planting your seeds. If you're a play-by-play guy, you don't have a script. You don't have a script. You got to call extemporaneously what you do. That's what Big C and I do on our show. There is no script for tonight's show. There is no script whatsoever. I'm speaking to the young person that wants to get into this business. I don't think I have the authority to speak to a Caucasian person about how to get into the business, because many of them that I saw in the business, they were just like Tony Romo. They got in by who they know. He didn't pay his dues. He didn't go to broadcast school. He didn't go to journalism school. He didn't start in a smaller market and work his way up like a lot of people have to, because he played the game and knew the right people. That's how the average white man gets into the broadcast booth. And that's a fact. It's not a knock. It's called white guy privilege. Called white skin privilege or whatever it is. Good old boy network. Does it work that way for black men? Not as much. That's why there's not as many on TV as there are playing on the surface, on the stadiums. But it can change. And I hope that Big C Sports is a part of that change. I talked about planting seeds when we started the show. How do you plant seeds? You do what I was told by Lewis Johnson back in 1996, Arizona State versus Stanford football game, down on the farm in Palo Alto. You get your microphone, you put on a TV event, and you turn down the sound, and you just speak into the microphone, and you speak extemporaneously as if you're the play-by-play guy, and you want to record how you sound, and you can't always please everybody. You're never going to please everybody. Sometimes it's hard to please yourself, but that's how you learn the ropes. But how do you get into the business, though? That's based on who you know. It's not sending out resumes. And just to be very frank, when I got started in that industry, it was by who I knew also. There was a point where someone said, you do a good job. It was the late Tom Kelly. He was a broadcaster for USC football. And I remember spotting a game, it was an all-star football game, California versus Texas All-Stars, down in Southern California. And he said, you do a good job. My man, what do you want to do? I said, I want to get in the broadcast. And then that was on a Saturday night. And on a Tuesday, I got a call from Mike Roy at Fox Sports. And he said, can you be in San Francisco for the 49ers and Chargers preseason football game? And I said, yes. I didn't even know what he wanted me there for, but I knew I was ready to do it because I'd already been planting my seeds. And then going through that business, it doesn't mean that you're always going to get chosen as you try to meander with some of the other people who are in that business. Oftentimes, if you're an African-American athlete, you'll get an opportunity because you played sports, not because you went to journalism school, not because you started in a small market. Sometimes you get that chance just because it's your brethren saying this guy has a familiar name or a face, and they'll give you a job. I think it happens more for the white guys, and they know it too, especially for Caucasian women. It happens for them too. And there are a lot of black women who want to get in this business. I think when I can't talk to them about Jane Kennedy growing up, watching her for CBS Sports, her with Irv Cross, and she was a former Miss America. And I think that just seeing that image, for a lot of young black women, from Pam Oliver, now there's so many more that are in the business, from Terry Champion, who does an excellent job with sports. I think there's a Maria Taylor who does an excellent job. There's so many that I look at the next generation of young broadcasters. What will it come from? Well, again, it's like the State of the Union. It's a very competitive business. Just like being Republican or Democratic, it's a competitive business. Not everybody wants to see you succeed, but you still got to plant your seeds. You got to make sure that you're doing what you want to do. You got to make sure that you speak from the heart. And no matter what you do, don't quit. Quitting is easy. A lot of people do it. I remember even myself getting into this business, and it goes back to, as a little boy, what do you want to be when you grow up? I knew when I was 8 years old that I wanted to do this business. So I found a way to get into it just by doing it. And as I got the opportunities to do more, being on college, the college news station, when I was in college, I was on the campus news station, covering the sports and news and entertainment. And it's something that I loved. And I hope and I believe that as we watch the State of the Union, there's a lot more people of color who are successful in politics than they are in sports broadcast. Of the many senators and congresspeople in the United States, there's over 100 people of color, women and people of color, that are in that business. You can't say the same for broadcasting. It's a tough business. No one's going to give you any opportunity that you're not ready for. It's almost what I was told as a young boy. You cannot say the wrong thing to the right person, and you cannot say the right thing to the wrong person. You got to stay positive. You got to keep an open mind. You got to have tunnel vision. Don't listen to people who don't happen to have a let me just put it this way. Everybody's going to want to give you advice. Eddie Murphy said it a long time ago. Maybe he was right. Maybe some people say, no, that's not true. He said, don't take advice from people who are not in the business, because they don't know how to get in the business. That's why they're out of it. Only listen to people who are in that business, who can teach you how you can do it too. And I think there's so many people that I met along the way that wanted to open a door, but I was told oftentimes growing up, well, you know, it's difficult to get in because of what? Today, streaming has made it so possible to do work that mainstream will never hire you for. You got to know that, especially if you're a person of color. I believe you can do anything, but if you believe that you have the ability, you believe that you have the talent, people will help you of all colors. I know it's predominantly mainstream, but as people of color, you made billion-dollar industry the NFL. That's what it is now. It's because of black labor. It's well compensated, just like the NBA, well compensated. You nearly have to be a billionaire to be an owner in those leagues that's dominated by black men. But you don't get that opportunity necessarily in broadcast. But you can do this. You can start your own podcast. Podcast converts more listeners than any medium, more than print, more than radio, more than TV. Podcast does. It's the number one fastest growing media in the history of the universe. Why is that? And I'm speaking to young black men and women, because a lot of young white kids, they don't need this advice. They already have the skin color. Well, they know somebody in that business. You don't believe me? Ask every person on the news how they got started. Most started with an internship, but it started by somebody that pretty much looked like them. That's a fact. Now, for people of color to get into this business, I see the great James Brown, who does his NFL work, and he was there for the Super Bowl. He's amazing. Absolutely excellent. And I just want everyone to know that you may never get to that platform, but there's a bigger platform like the one I'm speaking on right now. Get your tools, Get your dollars of what you do and start practicing. I've been doing this for a lifetime. Not everybody has to like it. I just told you, some people don't like Tony Romo. It doesn't stop him from making millions of dollars, working for CBS Sports, or Jim Nantz making several million working for CBS Sports. Some people don't like his broadcast either. But it doesn't matter if people like it. What matters is if you like it. I told you I think the best of the business is Gus Johnson, but he's doing college football. Used to do NFL. Maybe he wants to. I don't know. Everybody has their own choice. I think Joe Morgan is the best baseball broadcast voice in the universe. Hard to find him getting work since he had an incident with the LAPD. I think he was beaten up by somebody and by LAPD and filed a lawsuit, lost his work. But there's so many factors that you can't control outside of it. But again, back to this thing that I want to talk about is streaming. I want to say sports is a billion-dollar industry. Boys and girls sports is a foundation to this billion-dollar industry. For every athletic and sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with Big C Sports, whether you're a pro team, a collegiate team, a high school team, or your mom and pop soccer league. When you reach out to them, let them know Big C sent you. So back to the world of broadcasting. The reason you should consider podcasting, you'll notice everybody doing podcasting, from Stephen A. Smith, Mike and Mike, or I don't even think they're together anymore. But they started together. There's Jim Rome does podcasting. There's so many athletes who are doing the podcasting that are in that business. You just got to do it. The reason you got to do it is because your talent determines if you are going to be listened to or not. You don't have to show anyone what you can do and hope they give you an opportunity. You give yourself the opportunity. You just got to go out, get the platform. Now, of course, if you're picked up by a major network, like we've been fortunate to get that opportunity, that's great. But you just got to start where you are. So I want to tell young people, just like in politics, it's very competitive. Just like if you're an athlete, if you're the starting quarterback for a team, your backup doesn't want to see you start. Don't believe when they say, hey, it's a team game and I support my teammates. No, that's not true. They would rather be the starter. And if they would rather be the starter, they wouldn't be on the team. They got to always be ready. They're going to say the right thing, just like Jim Nantz is never going to say to Tony Romo, hey, let me finish my statement and then you do the color analyst work. Don't try to be the color analyst before the play starts and then it messes up my play-by-play. You guys think about that. If you guys are teaching broadcast, you know what I'm saying. You don't have to agree with it. It's just my opinion from many people that I've talked to. Like if you're Tony Romo, he's enjoying what he's doing, but it's against broadcast etiquette. You don't step on the toes of the play-by-play guy, especially before the play even happens. Maybe he has some inside knowledge we don't have. I still think he does a good job, but it's not appropriate. But he may or may not get admonished for it. I just don't think he'll be together as long as Buck and Aikman have been. They do a great job also. But everybody has their own style. I just think that if you're lucky enough to get into this business, you got to do it works for you. So again, for the young people that oftentimes say, "How do you do that? How do you get on that platform? How do you do what you do? How can I do that too?" In the old days, I remember Ralph Sendrich. I sent some resume tapes off to Ralph Sendrich. And he, one of the bigger agents out there in the business, this is about 20 years ago. He wrote a nice letter, said, I like your work, I like your diction, I like the way you deliver, etc., yada, yada, yada. At the same time, sending out to many of the broadcast networks, there's a million guys trying to do that same job. And there are not a million jobs out there. At the same time, if you are African American, you're more likely to get that work if you're a former athlete. And if you're a Caucasian guy, look at Jason Witten. He doesn't have broadcast experience, but he's broadcasting Monday Night Football. Why is that? Because he's a former athlete. He's Caucasian. That never hurt anybody, especially in this business. And I'm asking for all of our brethren, no matter what color you are, if we could open that door, just like imagine walking into a door and you have a lady walking behind you. Imagine opening that door for that lady so she can walk in. I know that's old school, but I still think that's fashionable. In the broadcast business, imagine if we did the same thing for the next generation of broadcasters. Where we open that door a little bit wider, it doesn't mean they're going to replace our jobs. because most of them don't have to now. They can get their own podcast equipment. They can have the knowledge, maybe get a co-host, and they can start doing their broadcast and then push for sponsorship. You have the opportunity to do whatever you see happening on TV, just like Tony Romo and Jim Nantz, and that's a great special. I hope people can just pull it up. I know it was on before the Super Bowl. I can't remember what network, but it may have been the Mothership. It's a great way in indoctrination into the world of sports broadcasting if you are someone aspiring to get into this business. And for the most part, if you went to journalism school, you'll know more about what I'm saying about not stepping on the toes of your play-by-play person. I know when Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth do their work, Al Michaels is good. I mean, he does a fine job. But I don't think Collinsworth steps on his toes the way Tony Romo steps on Jim Nantz's toes. And Al Michaels has been in that business as long as anybody. But again, everybody can do what they want to do. I do think also if you're Caucasian, you're not going to get the same criticism. They'll kind of let it go. But that's not, and everybody knows I'm telling the truth. You just don't see that. You can go look at all the broadcast work in the world, and you don't see play-by-play guys calling a play before the play's even snapped, and then the play-by-play have to come in and play second fiddle, and then the color analyst gets to explain what he just saw. So that's making it 2 for 1. Usually it's 1 for 1. The play-by-play guy talks, and then the analyst talks. They both get equal time. But what Romo's doing, and maybe because he's excited and they haven't coached him up on it, he'll do the announcing of the forecasting of what you're going to see, and then Jim Nantz will tell you what you saw, and then Romo will come right back and tell you again. So he's getting 2 for 1 airtime. Just watch it. You can watch some of the broadcast coaches. They know what I'm saying. It doesn't mean it's going to cost them anything. I'm just saying it's something to look out for. If you're trying to get into the business, you'll get admonished. I know some great broadcasters in NBA basketball that are in the golden circle for broadcast, doing it 50 years. They will tell their analysts, let me finish before you go. You don't want the play-by-play guy having to clean up what the color analyst said, especially before the play even began. So for a lot of young people, there's a right way and a wrong way to learn things, but everybody has an opinion, and mine is just one, but I know what you'll be admonished if you try to do what Romo's doing, especially as a young black guy getting into the business. You can't go stepping on the toes of the play-by-play guy. They'll admonish you a couple of times, and then they'll put you on a different assignment. And you know that's true, especially if you've been there. So I just want to encourage everybody, get your podcast growing. It's the fastest growing medium in the universe in the world of broadcasting. It converts more listeners. You control the topic and the airtime. You may not have the fanciest $1 million studio, because we don't have that, but we do have something that hardly anybody can do. And if they can do it, I just encourage them to do it. Like I said, anyone can criticize, just like the State of the Union tonight. And Big C and I have been talking about this for a long time. And this is especially for young African Americans who sometimes may find yourself on the outside looking in. Unless you have a uniform on, then you're the chosen one. They'll come after you now and ask you to be a part of that team. Sometimes even pay you, a few $1 million to be a part of that team. What you got to do is you got to do it extemporaneously. No teleprompter. You won't even see Tony Romo and the great. Tony Romo's good, okay, but you watch him with Jim Nantz. They have a chyron that's pumping them things to say also, but they do their own play-by-play. But they still have, when they turn around and they want to talk about what they're seeing on TV, they're chyrons that are putting up stats that they're reading from. John Madden, the late Pat Summerall, they also have the chyron assist. I know that because I was one of them. We're the ones that put together numbers that the play-by-play guy is going to read off, like yards and stats and down and distance, and someone is, 15 of 20, 138 yards and 2 first downs, etc., are sacked 3 times, etc. That's chyron people putting that stuff together. I just hope that everybody understands that, especially getting into the business. Don't be intimidated by it. You just got to understand it. But Big C Sports, we don't do it with a chyron. We don't have a teleprompter. We don't have a producer in our ear. And some people might say, yeah, that shows, but that's okay too. But we don't do it with someone telling us what to say. There's no statistician pumping in numbers. There's no spotter telling us what to identify. There's no one putting a cue card in front of our face saying, this is what you see on this play. We don't have that. And I would challenge anyone in the world, in fact, anyone in the universe, in the broadcast universe, do a show. You see so many shows on Monday through Friday, from 6 in the morning until late at night. I challenge all of our broadcast brethren. This is where black men can really excel, and I mean this from all my spirit. If the mainstream shows were to do a show where they just turn off the teleprompter, let the producer go home, don't have a script that you're reading from, and see if you really have the talent. I've been doing nonstop for 40 minutes. I'm going to go an hour. I don't have a producer. I don't have a script. I don't have a chyron. I don't have the lighting. I don't have any of that. I'm speaking from extemporaneous knowledge, and I'm speaking from my gut based on experience. That may work for some people. It may not work for others. But if you held everyone to that same standard in the broadcast business, there'd be a lot of people that would not know what to say. I know it because I've been with them when the teleprompter went down. I've been with them when they lost their notes. You will never see Big C Sports doing a show where we have 3 or 4 inches of notes in front of us on our desk, and I want you to watch these programs. Why am I saying this? Because it's true. Watch the programs in the morning. You're going to see the guys with the notepads on the desk. That means they don't really know what they're talking about. They don't. It's not a criticism. It's just a fact. It's an observation. If they knew what they were saying, they wouldn't have to have notes on everybody. They would just know it. Big C does it. He doesn't use a teleprompter. He doesn't use scripting. He doesn't use notes. He'll just have a topic. I throw him a topic, and he runs with it. I look at certain things. He'll throw me a topic. I'll give my opinion on it. So what we do when we do our show Tandem, I'm like the play-by-play guy. He's like the analyst. He's the mystic. He really knows something about everything from politics to religion to sports to history to the Constitution to the law, the Bill of Rights. Those things are important. And I hope that young people getting into this business make yourself well-rounded. Don't just be that dumb guy that sits up and talks about the score and how many yards someone has and who's the best player and who's going to throw for more yards and should Gurley have played more in the Super Bowl. Those guys, once they get rid of you, what are you going to do? At least have some more knowledge to do more than just that. That's just my opinion. Again, I work in real estate and mortgages and insurance and also in broadcast. Have a radio show, have a TV show that I'm producing right now to deal with athletes and entertainers, and also the world of real estate. So those things are not just based on CBS, ABC, or Fox saying, yeah, Charlton, we're going to sign you to a contract. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying have something more than that. There's a lot of people who were on the air, even if you go back 10 years, that are not on the air now. And everybody knows, they think, what happened to them? There's some people here in Northern California that I haven't heard on the air in a while that were on the air just last year. And again, I got started really on the national level in 1996, but I've been doing this since about 89, 88, 89. And I've learned from some of the best in the business, really some fascinating people that I really learned a lot from. And I love giving back to the next generation of young people. The next generation of young people that want to get into this business. But you are more, I think, in my own opinion, you have more of an opportunity of starting your own podcast, going out, get your own sponsorship, and then grow what you're doing. If you can do both, that's fine too. Nothing wrong with that. But don't just sit back and hope and wait that someone's going to give you something. Oftentimes, those jobs never come because they don't know who you are. Just a few things about the world of sports tonight. I know NBA action is big, and a lot of people are really focused on NBA now because the Super Bowl's over, 13-3. Most likely one of the the most boring Super Bowls I've seen. But congratulations, New England, 13-3 over the Rams. And I'm sure both teams will be back at least in the playoffs next year. Tonight's NBA action, we have the LA Clippers at Charlotte. We have the LA Lakers, they're playing at Indiana. Detroit's at New York. Toronto is at Philadelphia. That's a game that's really most likely the game of the night in the NBA. Love seeing if Joel Embiid can do his thing again, and Simmons. And I love what Toronto's put together. I know they're on the outside looking in. There's a lot of American media that doesn't really want to see Toronto in the NBA Finals, but I like what they're able to do, and it'd be good to see if we're going to have really world champions, how about at least a team from a different country, and that would be the Toronto Raptors playing maybe the Golden State Warriors. I mean, that would be a thing to see, but I really love to see maybe Philly or Boston against Golden State. I don't think Denver's going to get there in the end. I know they're a good team, but I think overall the experience will win going down the stretch in the playoffs. Also, Minnesota, they're at Memphis. Orlando's at Oklahoma City. Miami's at Portland. And I think when you just look at all of the things that we're looking at, you have Boston's at Cleveland. Cleveland's not the same since LeBron James left. We know that. Everybody has a hope, and you hope that you see diversity in sports, meaning you want to see different teams competing for championships. For those who saw New England get there 3 years in a row, I think it's a great thing. I mean, a lot of people say they don't want to see that. Everyone in Boston wanted to see it. The chances of seeing another run like Belichick and Tom Brady, that's so far off into the future. If you don't see it now, you'll probably never see it again. So I wouldn't even bet against New England getting back there again next year. I know maybe the Chiefs are the team that people are saying that they're the hot team right now, and maybe they want to see a team like Kansas City, come up and maybe knock off New England. But wouldn't it be great to see, just for the sake of the NFL? And I'm not really a fan of New England or the Patriots, but I'm a fan of how they win. I'm not a fan of anybody. I just love seeing good sports. But if you're a football guy, wouldn't you want to see the Patriots play 10 Super Bowls under Belichick and Brady? Because you never see it again. And I know a lot of people talk about how great John Wooden's UCLA teams were back in the day that won in the numerous championships, Boston Celtics, etc. But this is something that we probably won't see again in our lifetimes. I just love the fact that we have excellence in front of us. Tom Brady, people say, oh, he's the greatest player ever. He's not the greatest player ever. He's on the greatest team. As an athlete, he's not an athlete like many of the great athletes athletically. He doesn't have the talent of many top quarterbacks in the league. He's just not that athletic. But he's on a good team. It's a lot like watching their offensive line. They don't have the highest paid offensive line in the NFL, but as far as playing the game together, I say they're as good as anybody that can do it. They set the mark. But you can't argue that they have the best athletes on their offensive line. They just don't. Defensive line, same thing. You look at some of the worst quarterbacks drafted in the first round since the year 2000. You look at David Carr when he played for Houston Texans. And in 2002, Joey Harrington played for the Detroit Lions. Patrick Ramsey for the Redskins in 2002. Kyle Bowler played for the Ravens in 2003. I remember Kyle Bowler played at Cal Berkeley. He was out of Hart High School in Newhall, California. And they were a dominant high school football program. When he went to Cal Berkeley, they had some success also. But then in the NFL, didn't have the same success in the NFL. J.P. Lossman with the Bills, 2004. Now, here's a guy that I really loved following most of his career. Matt Leinart, he's a TV analyst now, but he played football at Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana, California under the great Bruce Rollinson. They're the two-time defending high school national champions. But Matt Leinart, I remember he played backup to a quarterback that went to USC by the name of Matt Grudegood. And I remember they had played a school called De La Salle up in the Bay Area. And they played that game in Stockton, California. It was on television. I think Fox Sports West had the game. And Matt Grudegood was the starting quarterback for Mater Dei. And Matt Leinart came in as a backup. Okay, Matt Leinart went on and set records at Mater Dei High School, went on to play for the University of Southern California, won a national championship when they beat Michigan in the Rose Bowl. And then they were also in a national championship game against Texas where they lost that game. But even prior to that, they had beaten Oklahoma to win a national championship down in the Orange Bowl 55-19. So watching Matt Leinart play over the years, he's had a lot of success. There are a lot of people that see him on TV. Is he the most dynamic person on television? No, not at all. That doesn't mean he doesn't have a job. He has a job because of who he knows, not necessarily what he knows. And that's no knock on Matt Leinart. But a lot of people in the business, they know that, and he knows it too. But you're given the opportunity. Again, he's Caucasian. So he's going to have that open door that a lot of people don't have open yet. And we're asking more people to open it. It's not a criticism, just an observation. DeMarcus Russell for the Raiders played at LSU. 2007, I think that's a quarterback that really didn't take it serious. Had all the physical tools to be really a dominant quarterback in the NFL. But he let his weight get away from him. Didn't have the right kind of, perhaps, coaching or system that could really benefit him for the Raiders. And we saw what happened in his career. It didn't last a long time. Here's another kid that was very hyped, Brady Quinn. And you think about Brady Quinn in 2007, played at Notre Dame. They also had a great game against the USC Trojans. It was Reggie Bush, Lindell White, Matt Leinart. That game at Touchdown Jesus, South Bend, Indiana. The Bush push, when Matt Leinart pushed Reggie Bush into the end zone, that was not really an illegal play. That was one of the greatest games I'd ever seen. It was a 4th down and 9, I think, and Matt Leinart audible to Dwayne Jarrett, who ran about 60 yards down inside the red zone, and then short couple of plays there, Matt Leinart was running for the end zone and was knocked out of bounds. The ball popped out of his arms, and luckily went out of bounds. But we all know what happened. Arguably one of the greatest games ever played in college football. It was known as the Reggie Bush push. But what Bush and Leinart did is they had chemistry. You know, we talking about Democrats and Republicans. Well, Reggie Bush was arguably one of the top running backs in the history of USC football. I still think you go back to O.J. Simpson, maybe even Mike Garrett. A lot of people say no, you got to look at Marcus Allen. You know, Charles White was a great running back too. Sam Bam Cunningham, so many of them. But that was that game. Brady Quinn was in that game, the quarterback for Notre Dame. Had a chance to beat USC, but it was a chemistry with USC that helped them win that game. Everybody has their opinion on who's great. You look at Sam Bradford for the Rams in 2010. Played at Oklahoma. This is a kid that's just been so injury prone, and you feel for him because he was highly touted coming out of Oklahoma. And you want people to stay healthy, but it's about opportunity, and sometimes you don't have the health on your side. I hope that young players can look at what these guys have done, because they're no longer playing the game, but many of them are still working in the broadcast in some role, if that's possible. Now, here's a guy who's much maligned, Jake Locker for the Titans. He came out of University of Washington. Obviously, success up in the Great Northwest for the Huskies. Not the same amount of success in the NFL. Blaine Gabbert for the Jaguars, 2011. How does he keep his job? I do believe he has the white skin privilege because he has a losing record as a quarterback. Still makes multiple millions of dollars. And Teddy Bridgewater sitting on the bench down there in he was so good for Minnesota until he got hurt. You know, he's played for the Jets. They got rid of him and sent him over to down in New Orleans and didn't get a chance to really shine. Of course, you're not going to shine much behind Drew Brees. I just hope he gets a better opportunity, at least what Blaine Gabbert's been given. You look at Christian Ponder for the Vikings in 2011, Brandon Wheaton for the Browns 2012, E.J. Emanuel for the Bills. I thought he had a great upside, but the Bills have had such a hard time winning games. I'm not really surprised if they don't have much success with anybody, especially what they've done the last couple of years. They made the playoffs once in the last 14 years. It wasn't enough for them the year before this last one. You look at Johnny Manziel, maybe the most maligned player at that time, coming out of Texas A&M. So many people thought that he would be the next, maybe Fran Tarkenton. You could say maybe Doug Flutie. I just think that he had some off-the-field issues, of course. Went to Canada, same thing. A little braggadocious with the money signs. It's hard to do that when you're an NFL player because there's a lot of guys that have money too, just like you. And they don't like when you're snubbing them in their face and all that jazz. So he had his issues, but he's a competitor and he's always trying to bounce back. Paxton Lynch, John Elway's hire for the Broncos in 2016 didn't pan out for him. I know Tony Romo did the interview with John Elway up in Denver, and it was about the playoffs and the Super Bowl and how they went around the country interviewing players. Of course, Elway's had a stellar career. He came out of Stanford, played under his father Jack down on the farm for the Stanford Cardinal. Of course, we know about his career and success, 2 Super Bowl championships with the Denver Broncos. So he'll always have that good old boy privilege that opens doors for people. But I thought that he hasn't done as great since Peyton Manning left the Denver Broncos, and you can just Google that for yourself. NFL Hall of Fame 2019, Champ Bailey, a cornerback for the Redskins and Broncos, Tony Gonzalez, tight end for the Chiefs. I remember Tony Gonzalez played basketball at Cal Berkeley, and I was actually a talent statistician at the Harmon Gym on the Cal Berkeley campus. It was the last game they played before they did the expansion from 6,000 to 12,000 seats. I think they were playing Arizona State, and Tony Gonzalez was there. Also interviewed him a couple of times when he played for the Chiefs when they came over to play the Raiders. I think one of the best tight ends out there. I still like Kellen Winslow, but you can't argue with the numbers. Ty Law for the Patriots and Jets and the Broncos. And again, I want to mention Tony Gonzalez played for the Chiefs and the Falcons. Ty Law, cornerback, Patriots, the Jets, and the Chiefs and Broncos. Ed Reed, why is he not a coach on somebody's staff? Might have been the best safety in the league. I've been looking at him and Ronnie Lott as being guys that you could build a whole franchise around. Ronnie Lott played at Eisenhower High School in Rialto, California. Went to the great University of Southern California. And, of course, played for the 49ers and the Raiders and also for the Jets. But he's, of course, gotten into broadcast and since gone. But he's doing things in business. But if you look at Reed, out of the University of Miami, the U, played just a dominant, like another coach in the field for the Ravens. He's a player that should be on someone's coaching staff. I would love to see Ed Reed get that opportunity. If he were like, McVay, they would say, hey, he can't miss. I mean, come on, McVay could not match at all what Ed Reed has accomplished as a football player. You look at Kevin Mawai and the center and the Seahawks and the Jets and the Titans. I mean, there's so many players that have put in their time. They've opened doors for people. I just want to wish all of them the best and whatever they do. Seniors, Johnny Robinson, safety, Dallas Texans. The Chiefs, Gil Brandt, vice president of player personnel, Dallas Cowboys. Pat Bowen, owner of the Broncos. There's a lot of great men and women who have built this league. I just hope that people will open up more doors for people of color. Top 5 teams with the most Hall of Famers of all time. The Bears, Chicago Bears, 28 players. Green Bay Packers, 25. The Pittsburgh Steelers with 21. The Washington Redskins have 20. And the New York Giants, 19. Now, in this political climate that we have, a lot of people feel that the Redskins should get rid of the name Redskin. I think if you look at some of the Native American tribes around the country, they could have a say-so in that. There's a lot of high schools. In fact, in California, I think the name Redskin has been banned. A lot of teams have changed it to a different name because they want to pay homage to Native Americans. And some people feel that they're slighted by that. The Cleveland Indians, same. I mean, that's something that people got to look into their hearts and say, is keeping that name more important than not offending other people, especially indigenous people? I know so much can be said about sports and how politics connects people, but when you watch the State of the Union and we talk about building a wall, what would the Native Americans think? I just think that's important to keep that in mind because we talk about keeping people out, and when I hear POTUS saying we got to build a wall to keep people out, what do the Native Americans think when they hear that garbage? I just think people have to reconcile with whatever our own enmity is for other people. Everyone needs to know all life came from the African continent. There's no need to discriminate against anybody. Why is there so much compassion in the NFL for Jared Goff's inability to perform in the big game, and the Rams coach Sean McVay inability to have a great game plan? Why was Gurley on the bench? Gurley said he wasn't injured. Everybody else is saying, well, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. Either way, if you tell the truth, say it yes or no. If he's not injured, what a horrible game plan. If he is injured, come out and tell people. I know betting has a lot to do with not disclosing information. In the NBA, the Nuggets were blown out by the Pistons last night, 129-103 in Detroit. The Wizards were taken advantage of at home by the Hawks, 137-129. And then the Bucks, they stay in command of the NBA East with a 113-94 win over the Nets. The Nets have been playing some good basketball of late. Indiana Pacers, they speak by the New Orleans Pelicans, 109-107 without Anthony Davis. If you're the Pelicans and Anthony Davis has already said he doesn't want to play for you, do you force somebody to stay married to you? If somebody wants to leave, you can't force someone to stay married. If he wants to leave, let him go and start building what you can build and quit trying to force somebody to stay on your team. The Houston Rockets, led by the scoring machine, James 5 Steps Harden, 44 points, beat up the Suns, 118-110. The Sacramento Kings, they remain in the playoff hunt. They won 7 in a row at home, 127-112 over the San Antonio Spurs. No one saw that coming. But the Kings, I've been saying that they would be a playoff team, and I do believe they'll get as a 7 or 8 seed. I believe that if they just keep working with De'Aaron Fox, Willie Cauley-Stein, Buddy Hield should be an all-star player, and Shumpert really added some attitude to that player, to that team. And they have just so many players that really, Bagley, I think, is going to be an all-star. They have so much hope in upswing at the Sacramento Kings. They just got to keep playing and stop saying we're a young team. You're not young anymore. You're a grown man. All of you could buy a drink at a bar. I think they could, Big C. At least some moonshine if they went down south. Quit saying you're a young team and start saying that you're ready to win. That's all they got to start doing. With a little more than a month remaining before March Madness begins, the top 5 in the men's college basketball, Tennessee's number 1, followed by number 2, Duke, number 3, Virginia, number 4, Gonzaga, number 5, Kentucky. I love what we do with Big C Sports. I'm going to go watch the State of the Union. I don't know what happened, but I hope that our country can pull together. For all the young people that want to get into broadcast, just go do it. Just do it. You got to find a way. It's yours. If God gave you the opportunity, just tell yourself it's yours and go do it. Not everybody's going to like you. I think Tony Romo does a good job, but I also think he steps on Jim Nantz' toes. I think there's a lot of men who do a great job. I still think Gus Johnson's the best in the business, but he's not doing NFL football right now for some reason. Everybody has their own choice. Just like a box of chocolates, you never know which one's inside. But what you do know is every time you get the chance, it's up to you to make it happen. Big C, I'm going to do this for you. We'll have you back on tomorrow. I know you're traveling. Back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. He would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. And as I always toss it to you, Big C, everybody knows if you want something, just make it happen. Speaking of making it happen, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the number 1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number 1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage all on their own. As we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.